The following is an interview of Dick Hamilton on April 4th, 2012. The interview was conducted in his home in Winder, Georgia. The interviewer is Jeannie Wendt. That's me. I'm his niece. My father was his older brother, Bill. This interview covers the 25 years that Dick spent in the FBI. There may be many more topics that come to mind after listening to this interview, so I encourage Dick and anyone in the family or anyone who is interested to pursue some of these topics and record it on a voice recorder or some kind of recording device, and maybe complete the years in the FBI to an even greater extent than he has done here. When did you decide to go into the Bureau?
I had finished my first year of law school and was laying out sort of for the next year, because that's when Ginny and I got married. And so while I was preparing to go back to school, back to law school at Bloomington, Indiana, then I was working in a Marion County, Indiana Sheriff's Office in Indianapolis. And while working there, I was in charge of the civil processing unit. An FBI agent came in and requested some information from our files, which I provided to him. And incidentally, he was the first FBI agent I had ever met. So I was quite interested in him. So I gave him what he wanted and so forth. And he came back either the next day or the following day and asked me if I would be interested in going in the Bureau.
So really the two of you hit it off.
Yeah. And
what was his name?
Pete King, I believe is right. Pete King. As I recall, Pete was a nickname. I forget his official name. Because I never really had any contact with him after that. Anyhow, that was presented me with quite a big decision I had to make, which would be changing my direction in life into practicing law or going in to law enforcement through the FBI. Jenny and I kicked it around with my folks and other family members, and
what were their reactions?
Mixed reaction.
Well, let's start with Ginny.
Mixed.
Yeah, I understand.
Well, there wasn't any immediate reaction. We just kicked the pros and cons of it. So anyhow, we decided, after much soul searching and taking into consideration that it would mean leaving our home, traveling various places, and doing all kinds of work. But at that time in my life, I had become so concerned about the communist movement that was taking place in our country that I really thought it would be good for me and for us, for me to go into some kind of work where I could fight the communist takeovers. So mainly because of that, probably, I think it was my decision we go into the Bureau, which we did. And I made the application for it through the Indianapolis office, and waited, probably 6 to 8 weeks. And Jenny and I were living in our first apartment when we got a telegram from the FBI that I had been accepted, and I had something like 10 days to report to Washington to start the new career.
Washington, obviously, D.C. I want to backtrack just a little bit, that you had served in the Air Force as it became the Air Force.
A what?
As it became the Air Force. You went into the Army Air Corps.
I went in the Army Air Corps. Didn't become the Air Force until 1948, I think it was.
And
I got out in 46.
You said you were surprised at your difficulty in reacclimating to civilian life. When I interviewed you last year.
Yeah, it wasn't just jumping right in and taking up where you left off 3 years before, 2.5 years before.
Well, you enjoyed your associations with the other men in the Army.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Was that
But then you're cut off from them. It's,
right.
You got a piece of paper in your hand that says you're discharged, so you're starting a new life. Or resuming the old life.
And
2.5 years of which had passed you by.
Uh-huh.
So you're jumping from this era, so to speak, to another era, which is only 2.5 years apart, but it's quite a jump at that age.
One of your reasons for the FBI was a strong, idealistic one in fighting our enemy, which at that time was the communist takeover of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, on a practical level, it looked like it was a career that would work. It was something you were well suited for, and you could support a family on it. But I wonder.
Well, I'd had a year in law school, and I had a fairly good basic background of law, not law enforcement, but of law as part of my background, which I could utilize in an FBI career.
So everything sort of fell into place.
Yeah, fell into place.
As well as you then talk about the agents that you've worked with, almost in the same way that you hear guys talk about their Army or military association.
There are a lot of similarities.
So that was
a lot of similarities.
That was another draw for you.
Well, I didn't know what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
As far as associations in the FBI, I could.
But it started out with your.
Just assume it would be similar.
And it started out with your relationship with this one man that you when you were in the.
Well, it wasn't a relationship; it was an acquaintance.
Yeah. Yeah, that relationship's probably a little bit stronger than what it really was. So, well, that kind of makes sense that you were looking and it seemed to fit. And just in general, did you ever regret having gone into the Bureau?
No, not really. A lot of times you would get a little disgusted at some of the leadership.
Sure.
But not very much to any extent. The Bureau had good leadership. What it is now, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could handle the Bureau the way it is now, but
policy.
No, I've never. To answer your question, I have no regrets, and I had none.